Not for most, yeah. The schools are probably offering, right? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Yasodanandana Brajajanranjana Yasodanandana Brajajanranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Asatara Satyashri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Gangamaya Jamuna Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvase Susunyavadi Paskachade Satarane. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Samsajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Panchakalpachubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. So it's February 16, 2026 in Naperville, Illinois. And now we're going to look at the overall philosophy of the role of penance and repentance in bhakti, right? We looked at how should we respond as a community to people who break the regulative principles or continually violate community norms, philosophically deviate, or engage in criminal activity. What should be our personal internal response to the people who do these things? And we looked at what should we do if we're the ones who mess up, if we're the ones who break our vows, if we're the ones who violate community norms, if we're the ones who deviate philosophically, if we're the ones even who perhaps commit some crime, how should we respond? And we talked about the value of sincere apology, which includes some sort of restitution if possible. So you might wonder, okay, well, looking at all that, what is the role of penance and repentance in bhakti? I think we have a lot of perhaps misunderstandings and misconceptions about it, which are fueling the inappropriate community responses or personal responses. So the way my mind works, I normally would have presented this first. First, what is the philosophical basis? But because we knew that we would get a smaller crowd on Monday, I thought that I would focus on the practical application over the weekend and then the philosophical basis last. But that also has its benefit from a pedagogical point of view, that you look at, I'm applying this, and now after you've looked at the specific application, you try to derive from that specific application what are the general principles. So it can work either way. Okay, so what are the, what problems do we have? I don't know if I'll bring out the flip chart, but yeah, sure. Let's go. Can we do it? Is it still here? It didn't take a vacation. You know, sometimes you have technological problems when you present. One of my funniest technological problems was with a whiteboard. You know how you got the handouts for Career Dharma? Before I had those handouts, I used to write all of that on a whiteboard. So I wrote all of that on the whiteboard for the first session, and when I came for the second session, it was still there. And I'm like, great, I don't have to rewrite it. I was so happy. So then I'm like, it's great, it's there. Then I turned to plug in my computer. As I'm doing that, somebody erases it. So I rewrote it. Yeah, why don't you? It has clips, so you have to take the, no. Yep. There's bobby pins there. Yeah, it's a. So then I rewrote it, and then when I came for the third session, again it was still there, and again I said, "Hey, it's still there. Nobody erased it. Okay, leave it." And again, I just went to plug in, and again somebody erased it. So okay, I'm going to rewrite it again. And then when they brought me markers, I'm rewriting it. I'm like, these are really good markers. Oops. Then we had to spend 10 minutes figuring out how to clean off the whiteboard. And I did not write it again after that. What's nice about a flip chart, you don't need to worry about what kind of markers you're using. And who arranged, are you the one who arranged the flip chart? Who arranged that we would have a flip chart? Who? Oh, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, like flipping. Actually flipping.
We're actually flipping the flip chart. Okay, so what are the problems or confusions or difficulties that we have in our movement because of not clearly understanding the relationship between penance, repentance, and bhakti? And I think after looking at these specific applications, you're in a better position to answer this, right? So see, there's a good thing about having this last. Yes, Prabhu. Oh, God, I never would have thought of that. Think Bhakti path is linear. Yeah, getting healthier, getting better, recovering from disease, recovering from a problem is never a straight line. It's never a straight line. It's more like, yeah, with anything, it's like that. Learning anything. Okay, what are some other, so these are problems. What are some other problems we have? Yes, Brahma. Yes, but I don't know if this is the right time. So you can try, and I may tell you, we'll bring it up later. You know, we are going to have from 10 to 11 is going to be a general, are you going to be able to be here then? Okay. From 10 to 11 is going to be a general question time, and it's too bad that not everybody can be here. So any questions anyone has had on any presentations, if we don't have time to cover it, but why don't you try and we'll see. Could be, yeah. Oh, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to answer that specifically, but yes. Are they the same? Are they different? In English and Sanskrit, is there a differentiation? What is that differentiation? You know, I don't go into that today, but it's a question that I've had myself. Maybe I kind of indirectly will go into that today. Let me see if the Lord in the heart inspires me with an answer as we go through these verses and stuff. Maybe that'll come up as a revelation. I love it when Krishna does that kind of thing. Yes. Mm. Lack of closure. Yeah. Now that actually I will touch on. Yes, Prabhu. And what problem does that create? No rectification and no introspection. Anybody else? Not a problem. So we're looking at the relationship on a philosophical basis, an overall basis. What's the relationship between penance, repentance, and bhakti? So the question is, if we don't know the answer to that question, if I say, what's the relationship between penance, repentance, and bhakti? And you go, well, I don't know. What problems come up? Why do we need to study this? You know, maybe you should just go home and rest after the weekend. So why are we here spending our time and energy on it? What problems? What's the need? What are the problems that are accruing because we don't know the answer to that question? Yes. So a problem may be that our heart doesn't soften, or that we're not sure how to soften our heart. Right? Would you put that as a problem? Yeah? A hard heart? Yes. Oh, I like that. So we may have unnecessarily struggle with sense control. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'd like you just to take like a couple minutes just to write down what you hope you're going to gain from this seminar, and hopefully you're not here just because you think you're supposed to be, what you've come to gain. What kind of clarity would you like to have? All right, so it seems, as Subal Prabhu brought out, I think it was Subal, that bhakti absolves the need for penance. We seem to have, we seem to have a conception that if you're doing bhakti, it's okay. It's okay. It's a little funny, but it's okay. We seem to have the idea, well, if I'm doing bhakti, I don't need to do any penance. I mean, I even had someone sort of kind of ask me this yesterday. Well, do you really need to apologize? Maybe you don't. Just give them some piece of cake. And they'll figure it out. You know, if I've broken some norm, I'll just give you a piece of cake. Give you a samosa or something. And then everything will be okay. And there seems to be a strong basis for this, right? Abandon all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me, I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. My Gurukul students would sing the English, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me, I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Sarvadharman pratyaja mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma sucha. All your sarva papebhyo, all of your sins, all of anything, moksha, it's fine. You just surrender and it's fine. And we have also a very famous verse, 6:116, in relationship specifically to penance. This is right after the discussion of the hellish planets. And so Parikit is asking, how can we keep people from going to hell? And Sukadeva Goswami says, my dear king, if a sinful person engages in the service of a bona fide devotee of the Lord and thus learns how to dedicate his life unto the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be completely purified. One cannot be purified merely by undergoing, now the word merely is important here, merely by undergoing austerity, penance, and here it's listed as two separate things, brahmacharya and the other methods of atonement I have previously described. And in the same general section of the Bhagavatam, 6.2, 9-10, the chanting of the holy name of Lord Vishnu is the best process of atonement for a thief of gold or other valuables, for a drunkard, for one who betrays a friend or relative. That's supposed to be a picture of somebody shooting their friend in the back. For one who kills a brahmana, or for one who indulges in sex with the wife of his guru or another superior. It is also the best method of atonement for one who murders women, the king, or his father, or for one who slaughters cows, and for all other sinful men. That's quite a list. Okay? These were all criminal activities. This was not breaking vows or yelling at somebody in front of the deities or preaching the wrong philosophy. These are kind of heavy crimes. Well, I guess drunkard is just breaking down. But these are heavy crimes, most of them. Or even if we talk about norms, betraying your friend is a pretty heavy thing. And he's saying chanting of a holy name is the best atonement. So we think, okay, that's it. Whatever I've done wrong, I just chant. Good. We got a firm pramana for that, don't we? Pretty solid pramana for that. Krishna says, simply by chanting the holy name of Lord Vishnu, I actually didn't write down the verse number. Simply by chanting the holy name of Lord Vishnu, such sinful persons may attract the attention of the Supreme Lord, who therefore considers, because this man has chanted my holy name, my duty is to give him protection. That's probably from the purport to that verse, but I didn't write that down. Okay. Can you make a note, slide 90, that I need to add the reference? So again, you just chant the holy name, and that's it. Krishna protects you, and that's it. We have another nice verse, 6.1.15, again, same section of the Bhagavatam. Only a rare person who has adopted complete, unalloyed devotional service to Krishna can uproot the weeds of sinful actions with no possibility that they will revive. He can do this simply by discharging devotional service, just as the sun can immediately dissipate fog by its rays. We could use some of that sun this morning. Yeah. Although my favorite time in the Dham is the foggy season. It's funny, in some of the translations of our Acharya's literatures, it's translated as the dewy season of the 6 seasons. They call it the dewy season, and that didn't make any sense to me. But when I spent some time in Govardhan, like in January, there's 3 weeks where it's very foggy, especially in the morning, and it's really delightful. Hardly anybody's around. I wrote an article for Back to Godhead about it, walking around Govardhan in the fog. But the sun immediately, as soon as the sun comes up, the fog is gone. So the sun of Bhakti, it rises, and the fog of sins is gone, and the weeds of sins, of mistakes, whatever, they're completely uprooted. Yeah, I'm sure we've all had some experience with pulling weeds incompletely in a garden, and then they just come back. But if you get the whole, it's so satisfying, isn't it, when you're weeding to get the whole root? Maybe some of you have never done that. If you haven't, I really recommend it. It's a, what would you say? It's a really nice thing to do, especially if you've had a really hard day or a really hard week. Go to a garden and weed. It's very satisfying, getting the weeds out by the root. We have some examples of this. Of course, we have the main example is of a Jamil, who was really sinful. He abandoned his proper wife. He got just his, Prabhupada says, you say girlfriend, we say prostitute. Yeah. So he entered into an illicit relationship, had many children with his girlfriend, and then because he had given up his varna, he had no way to earn a living. So he earned a living through cheating and thievery. He abandoned his parents, he abandoned his elderly parents, he abandoned his chaste proper wife, and he was just cheating people. And just by chanting, and not just chanting at the time of death, but Prabhupada said he was chanting, Narayana, come here, have your meals. It's one of the benefits of having devotee names, right? So the family I'm staying with there, they have a son called Gopinath, right? So Shri Radhika is saying, hey, Gopinath. I said, that's really nice. I know one family where they named their children Radha and Sham, so all day long it's like Radha, Sham in the house. And Prabhupada says if we remember our own names at the time of death, we can become purified. There's a nice example of this demigod who was cursed to become a serpent. He was very beautiful. He was very proud of his beauty. He definitely had the avagya mentality, and he laughed at an ugly sage who then cursed him to become a serpent. And when the residents of Vrindavan went to Ambika Gram, was it? For Shivaratri, which we just said Shivaratri. So Nanda Maharaj got swallowed by this serpent, and Krishna, just by touching the serpent with his lotus feet, liberated him from this curse. So just this touch of Krishna's lotus feet, he was liberated from his offense, and he regained his demigod form. We have Ahalya, right? Ahalya had an illicit relationship with Indra, and her husband cursed her to be a stone. And simply by the touch of Ram's lotus feet, she regained her original form, and she went to rejoin her husband. We have the example of the leper Vasudeva, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just embraced him, and he was free from his leprosy. So we might ask, well, is penance part of bhakti? Now, it's interesting if we look at these examples, we look at the examples of the serpent and Ahalya and Vasudeva, they had already suffered considerably before they were released. Or King Riga is another example, where they had actually gone through quite a bit of suffering that was actually imposed on them as a punishment. And if you think about Ajamila, he didn't go back to Godhead when the Vishnu Dutas came. Correct? They just left. And then he got his lifespan extended. He was destined to die at that point, but he lived longer. And then he engaged in bhakti, which is also interesting. I mean, Magrari the hunter is also interesting. That Narada Muni was saying, you're going to have to pay for all of this. And Magrari became repentant when he saw that. He's like, wow, I didn't realize that what I was doing was wrong. And then he also, he was just okay. Well, basically live as an ascetic. So it's these examples are a little interesting. If we look a little bit more under the surface of them, we see that they're a little bit more complex than at first appears. Now, of course, we have the statement in Srila Prabhupada's purport to Nectar of Instruction, verse 1. He talks about useless atonement like an elephant bathing. So this is interesting. Of course, I don't think most of us in our daily lives see a lot of bathing elephants. There's many references in the scripture to elephants. I don't know if you've noticed that. So, because this was a society where people regularly saw elephants. They regularly saw elephants both as domesticated animals for work. I think in the world, there's only a few places where elephants are used like that now. One of them is Thailand, where they still use elephants to get timber from the forest. But they also must have seen a lot of not domesticated elephants, because the wild or maddened elephant is a male elephant in must. And when people domesticate elephants, they do their best to avoid the males going into must. So in the traditional societies, they would not give the elephant food and water for a couple days as soon as the first sign of must would appear, and then that would knock it out. What they do in the West, elephants like in zoos or something, or they will isolate the elephant in a cage for a month or so until it passes. So I don't know I don't know absolutely that elephants are the only sexual reproducing creature where the male goes into a heightened period of reproduction. In all, the female goes into estrus periodically, but among elephants, the male can reproduce at any time, but they also have a period of heightened reproduction where their testosterone goes to the sky and back, and they start oozing a liquid from their forehead. You notice those descriptions in the Bhagavatam? The elephants oozing this liquid from their forehead, and they become crazy. They become crazy. If they are domesticated, they can turn against their trainer, although elephants are normally very kind, and they will knock down a garden, and they will knock down a village, and like that. biologists assume that this happens so the young bulls get a chance to mate, because if a young bull's in musk, the older bulls get out of the way. They're like, do it whatever you want. Have whatever cows you want from the elephant. But my point is, these references are there. You know, the maddened elephant, walking like an elephant, right? Just this morning, Krishna book was reading how Krishna walking in Mathura, Krishna and Balaram, they were walking like elephants. So we have all these references that, you know, in Naperville, we're like, an elephant bathing? You know? But what elephants do after they bathe, they put dust on themselves. They do that actually to repel insects. It's their natural insect repellent and a natural sunscreen that they use. But the point is, it's like you just cleaned yourself and now you're just getting dirty again. What is the point? And so atonement here is condemned. It's like an elephant bathing, that it's not really very useful. And sometimes if you're in a place where it's extremely hot, you know, if any of you have been in a place where it's extremely hot, like parts of India in May, or like been to places like this in Malaysia and stuff, you take a shower and within 2 minutes, you're drenched with perspiration. Like you've taken another shower in your own perspiration. And you wonder, what did I take a shower for? Like, what was the point of that? So it's something like that. You know, you're getting clean and immediately you're becoming dirty again. So we usually think of penance like that. Well, what's the point? And you remember yesterday we gave some bad examples of apologies, remember? Like Indra, who's like, I'm so sorry. I was overwhelmed. Don't let me do it again. And then he goes and does it again. Same thing. You know, he attacked the residents of Vrindavan, and then he attacks Krishna and Satyabhama. You know, it's just same mentality. Or Kamsa's like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did this. He seems to be introspective. He said, I'm acting like a demon. I can't believe I did this. Why did I kill my own nephews? Imprison my cousin's sister. I'm so sorry. You can go. And then the next day, he's right back at it. You know, okay, let's kill a bunch more kids. Right? Or Daksha. I mean, this was over more than one life. But it's interesting. He obviously didn't rectify his mentality. He offends Shiva, and then he offends Narada. And then it's interesting. He disappears out of the Bhagavatam. We don't hear about him anymore. You know, first he's the son of Lord Brahma, direct son of Lord Brahma without even a mother. Then, as Prabhupada says, he becomes the son of the Prachetas, who were Kshatriyas, from the womb of a woman, because of his offense to Lord Shiva. So he still had to suffer some, even with the apology, because he hadn't really changed. And you could see he didn't change, because he does the same thing. He's just like he thought Shiva didn't respect me. So he's thinking, Narada doesn't respect me. Let me curse him. So this kind of atonement, it's not really useful. It's not really helpful. I mean, it may be helpful in the sense that it will diminish some karmic reactions for that particular thing. Does this make sense to everybody? I do something wrong. If I pay for it now with some sort of heartfelt apology, with some sort of restitution, then I won't have to suffer either at all or much more minimally in the future in this life or in a forthcoming life. But that doesn't necessarily get rid of the desire to do the bad thing. And I think that most of us experience this. We do something that we know we shouldn't do, and we feel bad about it, and then we go and do it again. And it can be very frustrating, correct? I mean, at least I find it frustrating. Like, I know I don't want to do this. Why am I doing it again? So there's a platform at which penance and atonement is not really effective. you're just weed whacking. You know what weed whackers are? It's a fast rotating string. They're either electric or gas powered, and the people who cut your lawn, they go around like the edges and weed whack, they call it. But you're not pulling out the roots, and so it just comes back again. Right? It just, the problem doesn't go away. So I want to look at how penance might be a part of bhakti, how it might be integrated into bhakti. You just kind of explore this. So this is, I consider a very, very important verse in the Bhagavad Gita, 18.5. Yagya dana tapa, and here we have tapa used. Tapa karma na twajyam karyam evatat yagno dana tapaschaiva pavani manishinam. Twice Krishna sang in the same verse, yagya, dana, and tapa. 2 times. So yagya is, Prabhupada usually translates this word as sacrifice, which is perhaps a funny word, because in English we think of sacrifice as giving up something that you like. But yagya generally refers to some sort of ceremony, some sort of ritual ceremony of connection with the Lord. What you could say is a kind of sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time, you're sacrificing your energy, maybe sacrificing your money for the... Even Sankirtan Yagya, you're sacrificing time and energy. So there is some sacrifice involved, but it's primarily a ceremony of connection. So I usually give the analogy, you know, if I want to call somebody, let's say I want to call my granddaughter in Hawaii, so I would have to do a ceremony, right? I have to have a phone. The phone has to have charge. It has to be online. I have to know her number. If I put in the wrong number, it's not going to work. And I have to be conscious of time, because she's in a different time zone. I don't want to call her at 2 in the morning, then I'll just annoy her. So instead of making a connection, I'll just be annoying. Right? I've had some situations where people try to call me while I'm in the middle of giving a class, for example. So these ceremonies of connection, they have, and then she also has to have a phone, right? I mean, that has to be there as well. So for so many yagyas, you have to be very careful about these kind of things. We have 2 examples in the Bhagavatam of a yagya gone wrong. You know, one where they wanted a son and the wife in the middle says, actually, I'd rather a daughter. And so the priest just changes the mantra. And the other is the appearance of Vitrasura, where the priest just mispronounces, you know, in Sanskrit, it's kind of funny with the sandhi and stuff, right? How you pronounce it. So a little mispronunciation. Of course, the Sankirtan Yagya is not subject to those kind of things. You can, Prabhupada, my husband was right there when he heard Prabhupada saying, you can chant in the toilet room. I mean, don't bring your beads into the toilet room. But you can chant Hare Krishna anywhere. You can chant Hare Krishna, you know, in the hospital in an unclean state. It doesn't matter. Clean, unclean, happy, sad, sick, healthy, whatever. You can chant loudly, you can chant quietly, you can chant silently in your mind. Purified, unpurified. But it's still a ceremony of connection. So that should never be given up. And dana, charity should never be given up. I thought it very significant that Maharaj was quoting from Lord Kapila Dev that one of the cures for envy is charity. Charity is one of the principles of Varnashram. To share your prosperity with others, to be generous. Charity, by the way, doesn't just have to be, it's not just money, and Maharaj also mentioned that. Charity can be time, it can be effort, it can be intelligence. Now, something I didn't teach with Career Dharma are the 6 types of prosperity. We look at Shri and Aishvarya and Gyan and Vairagya. There's 6 different ways of being rich that you can share. And Prabhupada told my god sister Yamuna, if you don't teach other people how to cook, you'll become envious. Which I thought about, like, what's the relationship between them? But envy, as I mentioned the other day, it's where I don't want anyone to have as much or more than I have. You know, I may not be so envious that I want you to have absolutely nothing, like that Virkasura, he didn't even want anyone to be alive. So I may not have envy at that level, but I definitely, I don't want you to have as much knowledge or as much prestige or as much money or as nice of things as I have. Like you can have stuff. You know, you can, that's okay if you're not extremely envious, as long as I have more. As long as I'm more learned and more advanced and more beautiful and more talented, then you can be in second place as long as I'm getting the gold medal. And charity is just the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. Maharaj talked about this, how, you know, parents often want to see their children excel them. Sometimes you find envy between parents and children because this is a very polluted world. But in general, you don't. In general, you know, the father who never even finished high school is happy to see the child graduate from the university and excel them. And they're happy to sacrifice for the children to excel them. They're giving like that. So charity is you want to share. And like the householders are they're supposed to go outside. I don't think this would be so appropriate in Naperville, but you know, you're supposed to go outside. You might be reported to the police for disturbing the peace. You know. Anybody hungry? People come out of their doors and say, this is a middle-class neighborhood. Like, do you really think all you're doing is bothering everybody? But this concept, right, that I should share, Maharaj was pointing out, especially food. That we should be sharing food. But again, and everyone should do this. And tapa, and here we have the austerity penance thing. Does tapa mean austerity? Doesn't mean penance. Literally, it means like fire, heat. But, you know, one thing is if you didn't have anything to do penance for, why would you have to do austerities? Like, what would be the purpose? There's no austerities going on in the spiritual world. Prabhupada says there's no sannyasis in the spiritual world because what is there to renounce? You know, nobody has to perform any austerities. It's only enjoyment. So if you even think about austerities, we go through austerities because there's something wrong. I can't get, in order to get things, I have to do austerities because I don't have the good karma for them to come without austerities. Or because I've done something wrong, I have to do some austerities to rectify. So I have to do some austerities to gain pleasure. I have to do some austerities after gaining pleasure. I do austerities. If you think about food, we have to do a lot of austerities to get food. Either you have to grow food, which if any of you have ever grown any food, it's a lot of work. It sounds very romantic. I will have a vegetable garden until you actually start having a vegetable garden. And you see, it's a lot of work. And if you're not growing your own fruits and vegetables, then you have to go to a job and do a lot. So you have to do austerities to get the food, and you have to do austerities to cook. You know, we don't believe in just the big bang that you just put all the ingredients in your kitchen and explode your kitchen and there's a primordial soup sitting on your table. You know, you have to do some austerity. You have to do the austerity to maintain a place to cook and food storage and so many things. And then you have to do the austerity of the cleanup. One of the most difficult services to cover in a Hare Krishna temple is the cleanup and the pot washing. And if you eat the wrong things or you eat too much, then you also have to undergo austerity. You have to either voluntarily undergo some austerity while you're eating, correct? Am I correct? Or you have to undergo some austerity after you've eaten. It's your choice. You know, either you have to forswear the additional cheesecake during the meal, or afterwards you're like, oh my God, why did I have that third piece of cheesecake? And then you get on the scale and you're like, why did I have that third piece of cheesecake? So austerity is very much tied up with, we're talking about sense control. Right? So I think that there's a relationship between penance and austerity. And Krishna says these should not be given up even by the great souls. They purify. Pavanani, they purify everyone. No one should say, I'm so purified, I don't have to connect with the Lord, I don't have to share, and I don't have to do any penance or austerity. And this is to me, one of the most astonishing statements, and something that I think I have hardly begun to mine the depth of this statement. I really think I've just, and it's a statement that the Lord makes to Lord Brahma that I have been meditating on for years and years and years, and I still think I hardly have been able to understand it. And you notice this is in Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, text 23. Does anyone know what's in 2:9, 33 through 36? Excellent. I was so happy to give out Bhakti Shastri degrees yesterday. I was like, Prabhupada is so pleased with Bhakti Shastri degrees. I always like to go to a temple where there's a culture of studying Prabhupada's books. So yes, that's where the Chapter Slokis is. That's the essence of the Bhagavatam, the 4 verses that the Lord speaks to Lord Brahma, and all the rest of the Bhagavatam is expanded from that. If you want to know what is our essential core Siddhanta, it's those verses. There was nothing but myself before the creation. During the creation, there's nothing but myself. After the creation, there's nothing but myself. Anything that appears to be of value without relationship to me has no reality. That reflection that appears to be in darkness, just as the material elements enter into objects yet remain separate, so I enter into everything yet remain separate. And everyone should search this out in all circumstances, in all places, and in all times. So right before giving these 4 verses, the Lord tells Brahma, Tapo me hridayam sakshat atmaham tapaso. Tapa, which Prabhupada here is translating as penance. Me, Krishna is saying. Hridayam, heart. Sakshad, directly. Penance is my very heart. Penance is directly my heart. Then Atma Aham. Atma Aham. Myself. Tapaso. I am penance. Penance is directly my heart, and I am penance. And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, penance is the internal potency of the Lord. As I say, I don't know if in a million verse I will fully understand this verse. I find it, and Krishna says to Lord Brahma, Rahasyam, I'm going to teach you something secret here. This verse appears to me, this is before the Chaturshloki, but this verse appears to me to be a great mystery. Krishna is Satchit Ananda. He's only pleasure. Why would he say his very self is penance? And what does Krishna have to do penance for? As I said, in the spiritual world, there is no austerity. Of course, in Leela, Krishna apologizes to Mother Yasoda for stealing the butter. He apologizes to the gopis for not being there on time. And then he does it again, by the way. He apologized to the gopis by calling them the name of their rival. And then he does it again, over and over and over and over and over again. It's interesting. In Vidagdha Madhava, you see this, Krishna calls Radharani Chandravali, and then he apologizes, and she walks off in a huff, and then he makes up with her, and then he does it again. And then Madhu Mangal has to retranslate what Krishna said. Oh, what Krishna meant is this, And then he does it to Chandravali. He said, I was missing you, and my only solace was Radha. No, I meant Dara. And she's like, I just can't be here. I've obviously offended you. And she walks off. And he keeps doing it. So you could say that, but that's just playful. That's charming. Actually, the devotees are charmed by that. So looking at this, what this means, my own understanding is that penance and austerity serves to put things into balance. We have people talking about closure. It puts things into balance. It creates a state of equilibrium, of ultimate justice and fairness. The only cogent argument that the atheists have is if there's an all-powerful, all-loving God, why is there so much suffering? One lady asked me this yesterday. She says, why does Krishna do surgery on us without anesthesia? My answer to her is, because you refuse to learn through joy, that's why. I gave her an assignment. I said, go to Krishna and say, my dear Lord, I did this myself. I'm speaking from experience. You go to Krishna and say, my dear Lord, you're the supreme teacher. I'm a teacher. Maybe you couldn't say that if you're not a teacher. But I said, like, I'm a teacher and I have more than one teaching method. I mean, in these seminars, you're seeing probably 3 or 4 of them. But I have more than one teaching method. So you got to have more than one teacher. You can't only have one method. Can you try the fun one? You must have a fun one somewhere in your pedagogical bag. I said, you know, I'm kind of tired of learning through suffering. I'm kind of tired of it. Yeah, I'm learning, but it's like, I got that. I said, can you just try and experiment with me? And just, you know, can you teach me something through ecstasy? And then I said what I would do. I said, I promise that I will listen and I will follow. And then he did, and I don't have time today for that whole story. But actually he did. Now, what was interesting was that the lesson itself was still hard. It was in the context of a very joyful, ecstatic situation. But still, to see the anartha in my heart and confront it and deal with it was still not easy. And when I first became aware of it in the context of this very ecstatic, joyful situation, my initial knee-jerk reaction was to God, I don't want to see that. And then, wait a minute, this is what you asked for, because it happened a couple weeks later. You know, this is what you asked for. You asked to be given a lesson through an ecstatic situation, and you said you would listen and not run away from it. So I said, okay, Krishna, let me look at this. Let me look at this. Let me deal with this. And the pain lasted maybe 2 to 3 minutes, because Krishna kindly removed that particular anartha. So that's what I told her to do. I said, say to the Lord, give me a try. Try it. And I usually say to people, Krishna has different ways of calling his cows. So he calls them by name. You know, he has a japa mala made of jewels. And he calls the names of his cows, at least the leaders of the groups, by color. And if they still don't come, what does he do? He's got his flute. If that doesn't work, he has his buffalo horn. And if that doesn't work, he has a stick. So I tell people, don't wait for the stick. Stop waiting for the stick. Try to go and it's like, hey, Urmila, you gotta fix this. Hi. But so my understanding, and I'm like, yeah, later. He's like, it's gonna keep escalating. So that's my understanding of this, that this concept of balance, and also penance has a lot to do with authenticity, with being fully authentic, with being fully real, with a lack of pretension. You know, when Krishna's saying, Aham sarvasya prabhavo, he's not speaking out of pride, he's just stating a fact. Like if our devotee Ambarish says, I have a lot of money, that's not pride. Do you follow? If he said, well, actually, I'm very poor, people would say, what's wrong with you? One time, Ambarish went to see a palmist, and the palmist looked at his hand, didn't know who Ambarish was at all, looked at his hand and said, how many cars do you have? So, you know, Krishna's fully authentic. He's fully authentic. Also, I think what this means, you know, when Krishna says that he's in everyone's heart, he's witnessing the movements of all living entities. who are seated on a machine, Yantarudrani Maya, who are seated on a machine. That actually must be a bit of an austere. I mean, those of us who have kids, it's austere when we see our kids do something that's not good for them. That's hard. It's painful. And if you have adult children, you know, and I have adult grandchildren, and you don't always agree with all their life decisions. And it's hard. And you're thinking, if I want to be welcome in their house, I better keep my mouth shut. Yeah. By the way, you can always tell in what way you were a good parent in the eyes of your child by how they parent their children. Of course, the spouse has something to do with that, but still, if they're doing something with their kids just the way you did it, then you're like, okay, they like that. And then some things you see, they're just doing the opposites, because they didn't like that way that I and you're just like, I see you're doing that with your kids, all right. But it's an austerity. And then if your kids really thank you, Krishna. I have all very, very wonderful children and grandchildren. And some of them are still little children. But parents I know whose children have gone really bad. You know, what kind of an austerity is that? Your child becomes a drug addict. I know one kid raised in the movement who became a murderer. He writes me from prison. He's written me now 2 letters from prison. And one of the things I think, thank God his mother died before he did that. And his father has severe dementia. And thank God his father and mother have no idea that my son's becoming. But how much austerity would that be? How austere would it be? What kind of austerity would it be? And Krishna is neutral. Prabhupada says if you want to go to heaven, he'll give you the advice to go to heaven. You want to go to hell, he'll give you the advice to go to hell. And he's watching all these living entities in suffering. And his heart is penance. That in order for the living entities to have free will, in order for really love to blossom, in order for them to be a living entity, I take the position of neutrality. And Krishna takes the position of manifesting the material world. He doesn't have to manifest the material world. You know, like so many religions, they say, you have one life, and if you mess up, you go to hell forever. They're actually seeing God like he's a demon, you know, it's pretty hardcore. I don't know why they want to be with God eternally if they think that that's like where he's like. But Krishna's not like that. He could put us in a state of perpetual suspended animation, and he does that periodically. It says in the 5th canto that the Lord gets finally disgusted. Like, he's really disgusted. Like, I keep incarnating, I have the scriptures, I send my pure devotees, and you're still in Maya. Forget it. Burn the thing down. And fire comes out of the mouth of Anantasesha, and just burn it. Just go in my body of Mahavishnu is just state of suspended animation. And then again, Lord's, okay. Yeah. Like you put your kid in the corner, and then you're like, all right, get out of the corner. Let's try again. And he manifests this whole world just to facilitate our desires that are in opposition to him. Who would do that? Those who want to oppose him, who want to steal from him, who want to exploit him. He'll make a world where you can apparently do that. Where you can apparently harm other living entities. Where you can apparently be a demon and an exploiter. That's a kind of austerity of the heart of the Lord, isn't it? That compassion. So Krishna doesn't have to do any austerity for his own. He doesn't have any misbehavior. Again, in Leela, but that's another thing. Of course, sometimes in Leela, he actually does, like when Balaram kills Romaharshan Sutta, he says, what penance can I do? To set an example. And the sages say that, you know, you really need to do some penance here. He said, so Balaram kills Balvala and tours the holy places and gives up. He basically takes Vanaprastha. He stops the activities of Kshatriya and he goes to holy places. He doesn't engage in the fight. But generally, it's more that Krishna is doing this austerity of love. Kind of the austerity we do for someone we love. You know, you plan a surprise party for someone you love. That's an austerity. Think of what they like. You have to do the shopping, you have to do the planning and not let them know. But it's a blissful austerity. And of course, even those in Sattva Gun experience austerity as bliss. They actually don't see any difference between enjoyment and austerity. For those in Tamagun, life is just austerity. Which is interesting because those in Tamagun, the hallmark of Tamagun is you don't want to do any austerity. You want everything to come easily. You only do the good thing. You only do good things if it's easy. That's like the main principle of Tamagun. I'll only do what comes easily. And they'll say, oh, I'll buy a vegan burger if they sell it at McDonald's for the same price. I'm not going to drive to Govinda's. Okay. But their life, Krishna says, there's no happiness at all. It's just austerity. They don't have any pleasure in their life. And in Rajagun, people, they're really they're really proud of their austerities. I work so hard, I put in so many hours, I spent so much money to get all my accomplishments. But they're experiencing their austerity as austerity, and their enjoyment they're experiencing very temporarily. Some mental concoction, look at this beautiful house I have and this nice car, or some temporary sense pleasure. So we're talking about the austerity of eating. You know, some temporary. And in Sattva Gun, it's just the opposite. People say their austerity is pleasure. They're relishing their control of the mind and senses. They're relishing putting themselves in balance. Kind of the demarcation of sattva is being in balance, in harmony. And they're relishing that. And they don't see a difference, as Krishna talks about in 424. They don't see a difference between austerity and pleasure. Their austerity is their pleasure. And we can think about that again, a material example. You're doing the austerity, the surprise party and that's also your pleasure, right? Because there's love. You don't distinguish between the happiness of the party and the austerity of planning the party. You don't see like Rajagun, I'm doing all this work for you. You're not thinking like that. There's no difference. And then again, the Bhagavad Gita, tapas chasmi tapas vishu. I am the penances of all the ascetics. Whenever somebody does penance, Krishna says, I am that penance. I am what's putting things back into balance. So all this looks kind of interesting, as maybe penance might have something to do with bhakti. That maybe it's not something that we throw in the trash. Well, I'm just going to do bhakti. I know penance is irrelevant. It'd just be like a bathing elephant. So let's look a little bit about what penance is. If we look at the word, and Garuda Prabhu helped me with this, and he said, make sure you credit me. I am now officially crediting Garuda Prabhu. That prayas can mean abundance, and chittam means consciousness. Sometimes it's consciousness, heart, mind. So one has a big heart. And this is how I understand that Krishna says that penance is his heart, that penance is himself, that he is penance. It means to be big-hearted. If we look in various Sanskrit dictionaries, we'll find there is some meaning of penance as like an atonement ritual. But the most literal translations would be mental rectification after a fault, restoration of the conscience, corrective transformation of mind. And if you look primarily at Sanskrit literature, it means realigning your consciousness with Dharma. So it's not talking about action so much, it's talking about chitta, or mind and heart. How to bring your mind and heart back into balance. Now this I got from not a Gaudiya Vaishnava, but a Sanskritist, Dr. Robert Swoboda, where he says, in Sanskrit, I found this very interesting, that he says there's no Sanskrit word for guilt. Now, what I've seen is guilt is very useful for a minute or two. It's like a signal. Oh, I did something wrong. But if you stay there, it becomes like this ego-centered loop. I am a bad person. I'm a bad person. So you remember I gave you that chart about our response, like to other people's bad things, but it can also be in terms of ours. And in Tamagun is the blame. It's the helplessness. And the helplessness can be either it's my parents' fault, it's society's fault, it's my teacher's fault, it's my guru's fault, or whatever. It's somebody else's fault. It's President Trump's fault. It's somebody else's fault. And I'm just a helpless victim. Or it's my fault, but I'm a helpless victim. I just feel bad. I feel bad. I feel bad. I feel guilt. I feel shame. Again, I see those things are useful. And by the way, shame has its parallel as a Vyavicari Bhav, as a transcendental emotion in ecstatic lila. But materially, guilt and shame, although they have some usefulness, Prabhupada will criticize people as shameless. If you have no guilt and no shame, you're a sociopath or a psychopath, whichever one's worse. I forget. Anybody, psychologist, psychiatrist here, which is worse, the sociopath or the psychopath? Anyway, whichever is the worst. They have absolutely no guilt and no shame. So it's useful, but if you stay there, it's not useful. Does that make sense? It's like if you're driving and you realize you don't know where you are, that's useful. Oh, I must have made a wrong turn somewhere. But if you stay at that place, well, now I don't know where I am. I must have made a wrong turn. I guess I'm just going to stay here. So we have regret, the burning that comes afterwards, and atonement, making amends, prayastita, but not just feeling this non-productive thing over and over again. I wanted to look at can you also make a note 106? I have a period here that doesn't belong here. I also wanted to make a note of a very important statement in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is in the Eastern Ocean, the second wave, which is about sadhana bhakti. And this is verses 63 to 64. So I wanted to look at the word for word. So text 63. So from non-performance, is there a fault of the limbs of bhakti arises? So if you don't do the limbs of bhakti, that's a fault. But karmanam, of prescribed duties, if you don't do them, that's not a fault of those who are qualified for bhakti. So we don't say that first you have to do all the prescribed duties of varnashram and then you can do bhakti. If that were the case, Magrari couldn't do bhakti. Right? Jaghai and Madai couldn't do bhakti. We'd say first get your life together and then do bhakti. I once heard a devotee say you shouldn't chant Hare Krishna until you're following the four regulator principles. I said, no, that's not a fact. Or, sometimes Prabhupada says, first read Bhagavad Gita, then Bhagavatam, then Chaitanya Charitamrita. But, I was one of the people who opened up O'Hare Airport for big book distribution. And I'm telling you, we didn't do that. We gave out Krishna book to people. Like I was giving out Krishna book to a lot of people who had not read the Bhagavad Gita and who weren't even vegetarian. I didn't say, are you vegetarian? Sorry, I can't get this book. So as a qualification for bhakti, you don't have to have everything materially in order. Like what I will say to people is, look, if you're properly situated according to your varna and ashram, it's going to make bhakti so much easier. But even if your life is a mess, you can still do bhakti. It'll be harder, but you can still do it. If you've 5 times divorced with kids from 5 different fathers and, your whole life is, you can still chant Hare Krishna. Like you don't say, sorry. He's saying that for doing bhakti, that's not a fault. And then he says, from forbidden contact, you don't have to do prayashchitam. Atonement is not appropriate. Because this is a secret rahasyam. Again, we have this rahasyam. It's a secret. Tadvidam matam. This is the opinion of those who know Vida, who know knowledge from the Vaishnava Shastras. If you do something forbidden, of course you have daivat, which can mean by the will of the Lord or by accident. But interesting, because Maharaj Pariksit offended Shamaka Rishi in the heat of the moment, which is an accidental fall down. It's not a premeditated fall down, and by the will of the Lord, who wanted the Bhagavatam to be spoken, and he wanted Pariksit to be extricated from his situation. But he felt he had to do atonement. Well, it's interesting. If we're going to do a literal translation of this verse, it would mean from non-performance, a fault arises with regard to the limbs of bhakti, but this fault does not arise from non-performance of karmic duties for those qualified for bhakti. So again, his first statement is that getting all your ducks in a row karmically is not a requirement for taking up bhakti. The next thing, and he says, and from forbidden conduct, even accidentally, atonement is not appropriate. So again, this sounds like you don't need to rectify anything. And if you were to take this absolutely literally, you could spill milk on the floor and say, well, I'm chanting Hare Krishna. I don't have to clean it up. There was, when I used to live at Gita Nagari, I used to make yogurt from our cow milk from the cows there, from the Gosha. And I would be given a 3-gallon metal container of milk. And so a stove is this high. And to put all that milk in a pot, the pot would have to hold like 5 gallons. So it was a big pot. So I had to lift this 3-gallon container up to the top of the pot to pour it. So I was a little younger than I am today. I don't think I could do that now. How old was I there? Probably 20. So I would do that every day, and I would culture the yogurt and make the yogurt. Well, one time I missed, and 3 gallons of milk went all over the kitchen floor. And of course, right at that moment, Devaki Nandan Prabhu, who was the head of the Goshala, walked in the kitchen. At that precise moment, the only time I ever spilled the 3 gallons of milk. And he looked at it and went, liquid religion. But I didn't just say, well, I'm chanting Hare Krishna. I cleaned it up. I'm also thinking about, it was the second time I ever made ghee. This was in my house. So I just made the ghee, and without thinking, I poured the hot ghee into a plastic container. A combination of ghee and melted plastic. But I cleaned it up. I'm not, well, I'm a devotee. I don't have to clean it. So somebody could interpret this to say, well, if you mess up, it's all right because it's not, Rupa Goswami saying it's not appropriate. So what is he actually saying? He's saying forbidden acts, even if done accidentally, that in bhakti the solution is not just a ritual, but renewed practice of bhakti. Because why? Because bhakti rectifies your consciousness. And part of rectification of consciousness, my dear friends, is realizing that I should take care of things. Isn't it? When we're the offended party, what are we looking for in an apology? We may be looking for some sort of restitution. If somebody broke our window, we may want them to actually pay to repair our window. But essentially what we're looking for is a changed heart. Correct? Right? Somebody offends you, what you want to know is not, are they going through a ritual? Like again, those of us who have kids, you took your brother's toy. Say you're sorry. I'm sorry. Look at your brother while you say you're sorry. I'm sorry. That's not what we're looking for. We talked about this yesterday, good and bad apologies. We're looking for that there's been prayaschitta. And that's part of bhakti. It's not something separate from bhakti. It's not some ritual. But if you're doing bhakti properly, that prayaschitta should happen. You'll be in touch with Krishna's heart. This is an interesting verse in 2.6.27, where here Prabhupada's giving a word for word of prayaschitta as compensation. The translation is, thus I had to arrange all these necessary ingredients, this is Lord Brahma speaking, of paraphernalia and sacrifice from the personal bodily parts of the personality of Godhead. By invocation of the demigod's names, the ultimate goal, Vishnu, was gradually attained, and thus compensation and ultimate offering were complete. This nice verse from 12:37, where here Prabhupada is translating prayaschitam as transcendental activities. So translation is, Maitreya said, beginning from the front face of Brahma, gradually the four Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva became manifest. Thereafter, Vedic hymns, which had not been pronounced before, priestly rituals, the subject matters of the recitation, and transcendental activities were all established one after another. So what happens when somebody who's practicing Krishna consciousness doesn't think that penance is an integral part of bhakti? What happens when they think that bhakti is some kind of, they're actually thinking that bhakti is some kind of a mechanical process. They're thinking bhakti is a ritualistic process that absolves them of the need to do any other ritualistic process. And they see penance as a ritualistic process. So let's see what problem this creates. So Prabhupada says, so Krishna Nama Rupa Avatar. So we should respect chanting of Hare Krishna mantra with very carefulness, cautious, so that we may not commit any offense. Then your business is successful. Namnad balad yasahi papa budhi. If somebody thinks that I am living in Vrindavan, I am chanting Hare Krishna mantra, so if I do something sinful, what will it do? Eka nama Krishna nama yate papa kare papi haya tata papa kare te nahaya, from Prema Bhivarta. So what sinful I am doing? A little sinful. Yes, little sinful will be excused. But if it's done not willingly, but if you commit sinful activities willingly daily, then you'll be punished. Prabhupada's talking about devotees in Vrindavan. He said you'll be punished. That is laws of nature. Even if you are bhakta, Prabhupada says. You'll be given chance, but you'll have to be punished. That's from a lecture in 72. This is from a lecture in 76, also in Vrindavan. Prabhupada says, chanting will be increased 1,000 times if you chant in Vrindavan. Similarly, in other places, the sinful activities, if you commit that sinful activity in Vrindavan, then it will be increased 1,000 times. So we have to be very careful. So your benefit will be increased and your reactions will be increased.
So this is the process of Bhakti Yoga. You surrender, and in the past, whatever sinful activities you have done, that is quite out. Now, account closed. Now you begin a new life, devotional. And if you stick to the principle as it is instructed, that do not have illicit sex life, do not have intoxicants, do not eat meat, do not play gambling or speculate. You promise before Krishna and before the spiritual master, before the Vaishnavas, so many witnesses, and if you violate, then you can understand what you are doing. You promise before the deity, Krishna is not defined. So when initiation takes place, we promise so many things, but if we do not follow, if we do not keep our promise, that is a great fault. If you by chance, by mistake, you violate the regulated principle, that is excused. But if willingly, if you go on committing sinful life, just like in the churches they go to confess and again begin, that kind of business will not help. That kind of business will not help. Now I have confessed, now I begin new chapter of sinful life. Again I shall confess. Krishna is not so fool that he can cheat him by this process. No, that is not possible. Sometimes we take shelter of this verse that Opite Sudurachara, I have had sinful remain my be. Bhajate ma mananma, if he is fully engaged in my service, But this word is very important. One cannot be fully engaged in the service of Krishna unless he is purified. Jesam antagatam papam jananang punyakarmana. One who is completely freed from reaction of sinful life and is always engaged in pious activities, such person can be Krishna conscious. So it is not that one is a devotee at the same time a Krishna conscious. That is a contradiction. It cannot be. If he is actually Krishna conscious, he cannot be devotee. And if he is devotee, then he is not Krishna conscious. Two things cannot go parallel.
So it was nice in purport, Bhagavatam 1:15-29. Prabhupada says, birth after birth, the conditioned souls entrapped with so many pleasing and displeasing elements, which are all false and temporary, they accumulate due to our reactions to material desires. But when we get in touch with the transcendental Lord in his variegated energies by devotional service, the naked forms of all material desires become manifest, and the intelligence of the living being is pacified in its true color. So these are pictures of Ulysses going past the sirens. And I don't know today if anyone studies the Iliad and the Odyssey. Prabhupada definitely did, and he made reference to them sometimes. So when Ulysses was coming back from winning the war, he had many obstacles to go past, and one of them was the sirens, from which comes our word siren, as warning. And the sirens were witches who they were cannibalistic witches, and they wanted to eat sailors. So they would sing, but their singing was a magical spell that would make them appear to be beautiful. They were on a desert island filled with the bones of the sailors they had eaten, but their singing made them look like beautiful young women on a tropical island full of fruits, and would draw the sailors to their island. So Ulysses had all the men on his ship put wax in their ears so that they wouldn't hear the song of the sirens. But he was curious as to how could there be such a powerful song? So he didn't put wax in his ears, and he told the men, tie me to the mast of the ship as we go past this island, and do not follow any of my orders as we go past the island. So when you have when you put the earplugs in, you see the naked form of Maya. When you don't hear the siren song, you see the naked form of Maya. And when you see the naked form of Maya, you're not attracted. The sailors with the earplugs, they were rowing as fast as they could to get away from this island. So if we do bhakti properly, we will see offenses clearly. We will see sin clearly. We will see lack of respect clearly. We'll see envy clearly. We'll see arrogance clearly, and we'll become disgusted by it. Not aversion, which is the other side of attraction, but it's actually the ghastly rasa, where you'll be like, I don't want to do this. Like in our loving relationships in this world, when you become aware that you're doing something that's damaging your relationship and hurting the person you love, you never want to do it again. Even thinking about it, you're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this thing that hurts the person I love. I'm just not going to do that. Once you see things in their true color, and this is the ultimate prayaschittam, this is the ultimate expansion of the heart. You see Maya for what it is. You see Maya in its naked form, you don't see the illusion. You see what it is. And you see that it's disgusting. That envy is disgusting. That lust is disgusting. That greed is disgusting. That arrogance is disgusting. And you just want to get away from it as fast as you can. That is the ultimate prayaschittam. And again, we've all experienced this on some level in our material dealings. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that by my always coming late to dinner, I was causing you great anxiety. I didn't know. I just didn't know. Now that I have some empathy, now that I know how you're feeling, I'm going to make sure that I'm on time, or at least that I let you know in advance. Right? I was blind to it. I didn't see it. Bhagavatam 4:20-16. My dear king, I am very captivated, the Lord is saying, by your elevated qualities and excellent behavior, and thus I am very favorably inclined towards you. You may therefore ask from me any benediction you like. One who does not possess elevated qualities and behavior cannot possibly achieve my favor simply by performances of sacrifices, severe austerities, or mystic yoga. But I always remained equipoised in the hearts of one who is also equipoised. So Krishna is saying, if you're going to be a debauch, I'm not going to be there with you. I'll accept you in the beginning, no matter how fallen you are. You can be Jagai and Madai, you can be Magrari, you can be whatever. But I want you to come to actually that standard. Okay, I want to do two things to end up here. First, I want to do a private writing, and then actually I want to do a private writing, a short group discussion, and then end in plenary. So I'd like you to write here, and at least something that you write, you should be willing to share. Okay, you can write some things that are private, but I'd like you to write at least something that you're willing to share in a small group. What's your understanding now, after we've been through this, of the relationship of penance and bhakti? And if you might also write something of how that could be practically helpful to you, but please have something you write that is shareable. At least one thing you write that you're willing to share. Take another 2 minutes. Again, if you want to also add something that's just a personal reflection that's private, you can do that. You're not going to show someone your paper. Okay? So I'd like us to now get into a group of either just 2 or 3. So you can just talk with one person, or it could be 3 if we have an odd number of people. And just share whatever you've written that is shareable. Anything you've written that is shareable, if you can just share your reflections. make sure each person gets a chance to share something. Okay, let's come back as a whole group. We'll just finish up here as a whole group. I'm wondering if any of you, we're not going to have time to hear everything from everybody. I want to make sure you'll have time for prasadam. I lost the, oh, there it is. Anything that anyone would like to share? Yes? You can use the mic, that would be great. For this, let's have a circulating mic.
Mathaji, just quickly want to thank you for, changing my perspective to penance, because now I'm seeing penance as my companion more rather than resisting it. So thank you very much. The write-up that it softened my heart, Mathaji. Penance is like a caring mother I don't know if these understandings are correct. You could please correct me, Mathaji, because it's just probably emotional also. Penance is like a caring mother, if respectfully involved in bhakti process, will guide me toward the real goal. It is that pure ingredient of bhakti process which will undoubtedly take me to Krishna if understood and applied properly. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Did you want to share something? You sure?
Mathaji, I think I follow Amara Mathaji. My thing is we just chant and focus on bhakti aspects, forget about all that. Anyway, I don't have the capacity to do all the austerities, penances. But one thing I got is from both the ends. There is no shortcut or replacement for genuine practice of bhakti. That is the core. And at the same time, understand the relevance of penance and then apply it properly with the intent for the deeper connection to Krishna and the process.
By the way, I'm on my last paper here. We're done. Well, I don't know if we'll use anything in the. We might actually use the whiteboard for the plan possible. You have the whiteboard for that. You have a high-tech whiteboard. Make sure that we. Yeah. Any of the gentlemen like to share something?
Yeah, I was trained in the beginning of my Krishna consciousness that sacrifice is at the heart of my spiritual master always passed that message that is about sacrificing your personal things for the good of the mission or to dedicate the mission like that. So that part was always very strong. I appreciated very much the concept of penance and the clarity of especially when Lord Vishnu explained to Lord Brahma. I think it's very deep, and as you say, you've been trying to understand, and it's definitely something that we can meditate and meditate and meditate upon it. I think you sharing your realizations of that meditation with this presentation, and I appreciate that very much. So I also like Garuda's breakdown, the broadening your
Broadening
heart,
the heart, yes.
which is almost like akin to Prabhupada's definition of a Brahmana as a broad-minded,
Yes.
And the capacity that we can have to actually, receive.
Wow.
So they all come from penance, from that type of corrective measures of our shortcomings.
Yes. Very nice. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much. So when I heard this, when we hear these words austerity and penance, I always think about some sacrifice or some challenge, right? Just in the devotional perspective, not in the relationships perspective. So I was just thinking, I was trying to find some references where in the second canto and third canto you brought it up to ask the first question, but I was thinking about when the Lord says that he is the penance, or he likes it, or he's, those kind of references, it was not at all clear to me, like you mentioned it. But then I think I was kind of understanding in a way that every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So respecting and taking care of my challenges in the relationship is very important even for the Lord. Right? So I was just thinking from that perspective, that's how it is, penance is important for him as well from the living entity perspective.
And I'm just thinking, Mars has been focusing on respect. For a materially conditioned soul, respect is a penance and an austerity. I mean, it is. It is. Because it's hitting our ahankara. Yes.
Thank you so much, Urmila Mathaji. Really, really appreciate all the effort you put into getting this all together. And the last part of
Thank you for that, by the way.
Really, yeah.
I think sometimes people are unaware that to do these kind of things takes a long time. Because I have some people who say, can you give a class in an hour on this? And I'm like, well, yeah, but it takes a long time. This actually, I've been particularly meditating on this, I'd say intensely, for about 2 years. And gathering quotes and trying to put together something to figure this out. So thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate that. That's kind of appreciation I really appreciate. So thank you.
It was quite obvious. I'm sure everybody felt, how much effort has gone into
Thank you
this.
very much.
And Maharaj has been talking about this, about his discussions with you and how he is planning he was really looking forward to this joint presentation so much. And he also mentioned how thoroughly you prepare. And
okay, but that's enough now. Now,
yeah. Yes.
I have a limit as to how much, it's like how many glubjamins I can
right.
eat, like one is enough. So what's your realization?
I was thinking that the way you concluded this presentation, saying that the Bhakti, if someone thinks that Bhakti is a ritualistic process, that's not right. And unless one is fully purified, one cannot be engaged in Krishna's service. And so Krishna is saying that he himself is Prayaschitta. I mean, he himself is
Tapa.
Tapa. And so this Prayaschitta being the inner rectification of consciousness. So just superficial apology is not Prayaschitta. It is a transcendental activity.
And Prabhupada defines it like that.
Yeah.
He actually defines it as transcendental.
Yes, because it is related to Krishna. So it is a higher level of activity, and only from a purified consciousness one can execute Prayaschitta properly. And
wow.
This is how I felt. But I have a question with regard
questions.
To this. We'll do it.
Questions we're going to take at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just so everybody can eat, and I can respect all of your stomachs as equal to my own. So this is one of my favorite photographs of Srila Prabhupada, by the way. So I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to explore this topic. And it's something that I think is very, very needed in our movement for proper etiquette, proper social behavior among us, for proper internal realization of bhakti. So both for our internal life as trying to be devotees of the Lord, and also for working and living in community and dealing with the things that other people need to rectify, and dealing with what we need to rectify. And again, whatever you found of value here is all due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, to the mercy of the Lord, all of our acharyas, and I'm sure there were mistakes. Those are my fault. Kindly ignore the faults. As one of my friends said, don't just look at the crack in the painting, look at the painting. So if you could ignore the cracks in the painting, or you can correct me later if you like. And Krishna willing, we will have questions from 10 to 11. And then from 11 to 12, we're going to be working on some plans, either in a community level or personal level, to bring things forward from these different seminars. And thank you, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And thank you for the tech people. Where's our tech guy? Hare Krishna. I always got to thank the tech people. Yeah, you just spend a lot of time making these presentations, and then if the tech doesn't work, it's awful, you know.